Good afternoon, everyone. Author R. Weir here, Randy, as friends like to call me, but got a great guest today. We're doing back-to-back weeks since we're heading out of town for a couple of big events, which we'll talk about. Um, my guest will be at as well. So I'm doing a couple of quick ones because it's going to be hard to do a video conference, video podcast, depending on what the internet connection is like at the RV park we're going to be staying at. But I just wanted to quickly promote my latest book, as always, The Murder by 100 Cuts, The Trial of the Front Range Butcher, which is one of my award-winning books. Sure to check that out. If you like thrillers, I think this is, at least I hope it was a good one. Reviews have been great on it so far, so you need to check that out. Available on Amazon, Kindle, books, Kindle Unlimited as well. So if you have that subscription service. And then my latest audiobook as well, Philip Polite. We had The Divine Devils, and then he did my Silver Falchion Award winner, and then the other Silver Falchion Award winner, Fallen Star, just came out as an audiobook by Philip Polite. So I hope you'll check those out. Audiobooks are big, but it's good to listen to. And I had fun listening to Philip interpret all my characters, all 50 plus of them that I have in that book. So he does a lot of voices, not quite Rich Little, but he does a really good job. So, but I'm excited to have my guest here today. He is a former sergeant, police officer, 27 years of experience, and it's going to be great talking to him about crime type novels. So Bruce Robert Coffin is joining us today. Hi, Bruce. How's it going from Maine?
Yeah. Hi, Randy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I appreciate you spending some time with us. I know you've been busy working on your latest book.
Yeah.
I think it was your wife who emailed me back initially. I'm assuming. Does she handle your emails, or is
Karen? Yeah, my wife.
Yeah.
Karen. She's my she's the boss. She's my firewall. She's pretty much everything. I write the books and she does everything else. Keeps the balls up in the air for me. So if I didn't have her juggling everything for me, I'd never get any of this done.
So you mentioned to me at backstage when we were talking that she retired. So how much do you pay her?
Right. Well, I told her, she gets a really nice percentage. It's just, unfortunately, there's not much there. So the percentage is based on that. But, maybe one day if she plays her cards right.
You just don't think about the hourly rate, right? That's
exactly.
Just like being an author, we spend all these hours writing and we sell these books and then you find these people that pirate the books and throw them out there. And it's like, do you realize how many hours goes into writing this book? Our hourly wage is probably like 20 cents an hour.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully there's a special place in hell for the pirates. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. I definitely don't like that when it's like, wow, my books are out there. And I had a fight with one who had it on there, and they had an email address to send to say, well, if this book shouldn't be on here, you email it. And I emailed that address, and of course it bounced back. So I actually went to the webmaster and talked to them and finally got the books pulled off the site. But it's a struggle sometimes to get these things.
I think it's like pulling weeds, like anything,
Oh yeah, it is. And yeah, it's they get them and they put them up there, and they don't realize how much work is involved. So, Well, thanks again, Bruce, for being on today. Tell us a little about yourself. You say you live up there in Maine, and a little of your background.
I do. I retired. I'm a retired detective sergeant from the Portland, Maine Police Department. I left the job about almost 12 years ago. 12 years ago next month. And when I left, my goal was to become a published author. Actually, my first goal was just to finish a novel, and I kind of shot past that a little bit. I went overboard, but that was really it for me. Writing has become my second career. I'm currently working on what will be my 9th published novel, and I was published for the first time back in 2016, and it was the first of 4 books I did with HarperCollins, and never looked back. So. Charmed life, I guess is how you say it. It only took, everybody has different levels, but I think it took me 4 years of writing again before I finally hit the jackpot and got a book out into the public eye. So that's relatively short for a lot of the people I know. So like I say, I consider myself blessed in that.
So were you writing, did you write while you were still a police officer? Was that something you always wanted to do, or just something that once you retired, go, I'm going to write?
Yeah, I mean, really, writing, I think, was one of the reasons that I retired. I had not been writing. I hadn't written since college.
Mhm.
I had one of those experiences that many of the writers I have met had, which is a less than stellar experience with a writing professor. And for me, that was it. I just sort of turned tail and went in a different direction. And for me, luckily, that ended up being law enforcement, which I did for 28 years, retiring as a detective sergeant in charge of the homicide and violent crime detectives. And I wonder now, were it not for that career choice, would I have gone back to writing? I mean, that really was that simple. I hadn't done any fiction writing for 30 years, and I blame my wife again. She bought me an iPad for the holidays, and I was off and running after that. Once I realized that there was a WordPad document on there that I could write, to my heart's content. It was that simple. Things started spilling out of me that apparently I had bottled up. Characters I had never met before, and ideas for stories, and that's really what happened. And it's funny because where I started on an iPad, I've written every novel I've ever penned on an iPad. So for me, it's the new world equivalent of the old IBM Selectric that I used to type on for papers and reports and that kind of stuff. So we've come a long way, instead of having to carry that around.
So you write all your books on an iPad.
Yep. Yeah.
So
The
you got
first,
a obviously got a Bluetooth keyboard, I'm assuming. I
I
don't
do
think you
now.
can write everything, hopefully.
Yeah, I do know. I didn't realize I don't know that when I started they even had that. It's funny they didn't have Microsoft didn't even have a version for the Apple products for their Word when I first started writing. So everything had to be transferred, and reformatted. But when I first started, I don't know that there were Bluetooth keyboards. There may have been, but for a guy with his first iPad, that was too high tech for me. So, I've got whatever it is, the 50 or so smudge prints on the screen from typing the book literally while holding it in my lap.
Wow.
That was the first attempt at a novel. So, yeah, I did it the hard way, but I definitely appreciated the ability to edit without having to use whiteout. That was kind of nice.
Yes, I know when I wrote some novels way back on an old manual typewriter, and then eventually got a word processor. I was like, wow, this is really nice.
High tech, right? High tech.
Yeah, yeah, and I wasn't very good typist sometimes either. So it's easier to fix your mistakes on a computer than when you're doing it
Right.
on paper. And like you said, white out, and or you've
Yep.
got the backspace over, and you type over and white, and it was.
Yep.
Of course, it made
Tough
a nice
times.
sound though.
Yes.
I kind of miss that sound.
I see
The
some of the writers. I know Joe Finder has gone out and purchased one of those that actually feels and sounds like a keyboard key
yes,
from a typewriter, and it's a Bluetooth item that connects to your computer. So anything to relive those old glory days, I guess, is how that goes, right?
yes, that makes you go. So when you were 30 years ago when you wrote, was it crime based type of book stuff that you were writing then as well that you were giving to your professor who told you? I'm guessing he must have told you you sucked.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
pretty
why.
much. Yeah, pretty much. In not so many words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was mystery, some of it was just whatever entertaining stories.
Mhm.
There was kind of, I think there was always kind of a dark bend to them. I had really cut my teeth on a lot of Stephen King reading at that point, and so I had a passion, I guess, for the horror genre specifically.
Mhm.
But and I really, after reading all those things, I wanted to be the next Stephen King. I mean, I think that was sort of everybody in my area that grew up wanting to be a writer. I
Sure.
think that's what we all aspired to. So, and I remember reading, I've probably read On Writing at least 5 times. That was a pretty inspirational book for me as well, to listen to, the master kind of lay out exactly how he does what he does. And it was real easy, actually, even reading his own. He would give you glimpses at his own childhood or upbringing and some of the struggles that he had. And for me, it was interesting to see how he took those and reshaped the incidents into what became, really popular novels. You can see where the ideas for some of those things came from. And I think as a writer, the one thing you learn either through somebody else or on your own is that the stuff that we love to read and the stuff that we hope that we can write is the things that readers will identify with. And I think adversity is one of the things that we all can identify with. I mean, everybody's had their struggles in life, and if you can, accurately and honestly capture that and make them a part of your characters' lives, then I think finding a readership base will not ever be a problem for you.
So have you met Stephen?
I have on several
Yep.
occasions. He wouldn't remember any of those, but I remember standing in line to see him when I was just a teen.
Yeah.
He definitely made quite an impression on me. I've read, way beyond that since this, but really the first time I ever realized that I wanted to be a novelist was after reading Salem's Lot. That pretty much nailed it down for me.
Yeah.
Anybody that could write a retelling of Dracula and set it in an area that everybody knew, your typical American small town, and have it be believable because he populated it with people that we see every day in our travels, and wrote about places that I knew that actually existed, and it, for whatever reason, that did something to heighten the horror.
Yeah.
It made it more believable that it could happen because suddenly they weren't writing about something happening in Transylvania, a place that nobody could point to on the map. They were writing about my own backyard, and Stephen's stories just became more terrifying. And I just thought, after finishing that book, I went, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to enthrall the reader. I want to write something they can't put down. And that was it, and that I was 11 years old at that time. So it was a huge impression on me and really helped to shape, I think, who I became.
Wow, at 11 years old, you read that.
Yep.
How did your parents feel about that? I mean, being that type of book, and
My mother was dead against it. There
yeah,
was a little tiff in the household about that, and my dad thought it would be fine for me.
yeah,
And I read it in 2 or 3 days, and my mother was 100% right. I was way too young. It scared the hell out of me. But like I say, it really
yeah,
it planted a seed inside me, and it changed who I would become, I think. So
yeah. That's good. I mean, there's all books. I think anyone who wants to. I mean, I don't know. Maybe everybody wants to be a writer. We can't all do it, but I mean, everybody if you read a story that really captures your imagination, you're going, dang, I really want to be able to do that, to get to
right.
bring people in like that and get their attention. So
Yep.
it,
Well, I
it
think
is,
everybody's a storyteller too. That's the
yeah,
thing. They say, how do how can you do this? How can you make up this stuff? How can you be a writer? And how can you stay focused that long to write a book? But I think all of us are storytellers. I mean, everybody you meet has a story to tell,
right.
and some can't wait to tell you their story, even if you don't prompt them. We all have friends like that, right? Before they even ask you how you're doing, boom, they're off on a story. But I think taking the time to try and develop that as a skill and be able to make up stories and books that people want to read is just the next step, the next logical step.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So obviously you wanted to write. You were, was this in college? You were, and your professor was like, this isn't really for you. So then you
Yep.
became a police officer. So you're talked about in Maine,
Right.
27 years. Were you on the same police force for 27
I
years?
was. Yep, I was. I did a number of different jobs. Like everybody, you started patrol and worked at Footbeat for a while until I finally got assigned a car and a beat, and you work your way up. I was lucky enough to be part of the fatal investigation unit, which I think really is where I cut my teeth on death investigations. I was fascinated by, the amount of work it takes and the meticulous nature of collecting evidence and all that stuff, and knowing how to question people and put a case together. And that really was what led me to be, in the detective unit, doing homicides and violent crime investigations. So, and I was lucky enough to do a stint. I was loaned to the FBI for 4 years following 9/11 to do counter-terrorism work. And And so really, I was very lucky. For me, by the time 2012 rolled around, the bug for writing had come back, and I think I'd just gotten tired. You reach a point in your life. I know a lot of the old timers that I talked to that had retired before me all said, when I would ask, how do you know? How do you know when you get done? Because you still love the job. And they all said to a person, you'll just know. You'll suddenly wake up one day and you realize you had enough. That you've done everything you could ever imagine, and most of it more than once, and that you just don't want to do that anymore. It's time for something different. And I was lucky enough for me that, one of the deals I made with myself is that, I set about writing. I mean, I really wanted to take that seriously, but I did other things as well. The pension only goes so far. And so I buckled down on the writing, but I did other things. And the deal I made with myself was if I was going to really leave law enforcement, then I had to leave. I saw a lot of people kind of languishing around and hanging around the station or taking those jobs that we all expect a retired cop will take. They're court security, or they're going to work for another police department, or whatever it is. Right. And I know that's how some people deal with it, but for me, I just thought, if I'm really going to make a break from this job, then I have to do that and make a break from the job, not be the guy that hangs around. And I'm glad I did. It really allowed me to reinvent myself. So, and I've got a whole new tribe of family members that, to me, a lot of them are just as close as the people that I was friends with when I was in law enforcement. So now they just happen to be writers. So, and some actually a combination of the two careers. So it's been a lot of fun making that transition.
Yeah, you kind of hung up there a little bit. We had a little blip there, but I think
we got
did I? I think we got most of it, though. So you didn't want to be like Bosch and go be a private eye then. Instead, you decided you wanted to write about private eyes, or at least detectives in general.
Right.
So what was it like working for the FBI?
What's that?
What was it like working for the FBI? Did you actually have to go down to Washington, or do they have an offices there? Or
yeah, we Actually, I travel quite a bit. We did cases in our area, and everything you can imagine, and a lot of things I can't talk about. Yeah, but we did a lot of travel, a lot of training. Spent quite a bit of time at Quantico, and it was great. I made a whole bunch of new friends, and I got to see law enforcement and intelligence from an entirely different perspective from what my day-to-day job had been. So it was a great experience, and I developed some more lifelong friendships and also contacts for a writer, which are always good, right?
Yeah. And was the politics as bad as it is now? It seems like it's become such a political boiling point now with and we won't get into too much of politics because you can't win that war no matter which side you're on. But
law enforcement, I think in general, is always a political animal.
Yeah.
Never really so much with the rank and file. It's probably like any business. You get up into the higher echelon, and they're all about politics. I've had a number of police chiefs tell me that they didn't realize how political that job was until they got it, and they missed being, police officers or detectives or whatever they had been. At some point, you realize when you're up high in an organization like that you are no longer a cop. You're now, an investigator. You're now a politician. So there's always a sense of that, especially when you're working on cases that are very hot button, very front burner for the public. You're in the public eye, and unfortunately for us, every time somebody does something wrong or commits a crime or whatever it is in our business, we all get painted with that broad brush. And it happens to other professions as well, but I think somehow with greater frequency to ours. And I don't know how much of that is just because, we represent the government. People don't like to be told what to do, and myself included. So I think it's just the nature of the beast. The nice thing about it, as far as a writing perspective, is that that politics. You mentioned Michael Conley in his Bosch books. He does a really good job of encapsulating that. Right. He actually gets into Bosch's head, so he's learned what he's talking about from other police officers, because Conley does that very well. And I think that's one of the things that I enjoy about bringing to the page on the detective books that I've written, is that you get a glimpse inside the head of my characters as well, not just the job that they do.
Yeah, and when you write a series, you can do that. You can really branch out and really get into a lot of the depth of that character and his thinking and all that. So tell us a little bit about your one series that you've written. Was that a detective or private eye?
No,
I have,
detective. Yeah,
yeah.
he's a detective sergeant for the Portland Police Department.
Yeah.
Odd how I came up with that. It's quite a stretch for me. But and his name
The
is
names
John
have been
Byron,
changed, right? No,
right?
no real characters and no.
Write what you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, John Byron was born. He had the same job I did. I obviously took a few liberties with that to make, the stories entertaining. But I tried to stay as true to life as I could with the series. And yeah, my first series is very Portland centric. You kind of have to, if you're writing a procedural series like the Detective Byron Mysteries, you kind of have to, you've got to set them in that small town. Portland, Maine is not L.A. And so every case has to happen there first. The investigation may branch out into different parts of the state or into neighboring states, as it does in some of these books, but the epicenter always has to be Portland, Maine. And so I spent a lot of time, building up characters and storylines. That particular series, I learned a lot writing. One of the things I did accidentally write at the beginning was that I really, with books I've written, books I've read, and series that I have watched that I like to watch on like streaming television, it's the characters for me that are always first. A good story is certainly something that you want to have, but it's the characters that always keep me turning the page or coming back to another book. And so I intentionally built in character arcs to my main characters in the series, knowing that if, we originally signed for 3 books, so I knew I had at least 3 books to play with, but I wanted my characters to not be static. I was looking for them to develop or to fall back in their lives, whatever it is that they were chasing. In Byron's case, one of his problems was sobriety and something that was a little rough for him in his childhood that had followed him into adulthood and probably had a lot to do with why he became a police officer in the first place. And so in the first novel, Among the Shadows, we dealt with that front and center. And so in order to show the reader who Byron was, the story itself lent itself to being able to cover the historical parts of Byron's life. The fact that his father was a police officer before him in Portland. And so you really get a glimpse at who Byron is as he's investigating the death of a former lieutenant within the department. So it kind of sets Byron off and going in the direction that I envisioned him and his team going in. And it turned out to be a very popular book, so I'm pretty happy.
And you said you signed for a 3-book deal, but I think isn't there 4 books now in the series?
Yeah, we ultimately, unfortunately for us, just before COVID, I signed and completed the 4th novel, which is Within Plain Sight, and that was just a 1-book deal to add on to the series, and I think everyone was looking to see how that book would do sales wise, and then that book came out the very beginning of February in 2020, and because we all know what happened right after that. So
yeah.
I think we did the launch, a very successful launch, and then we had I think 4 or 5 appearances, and then the last thing I did was fly to Left Coast Crime in San Diego, and while we were there, the very first day of the conference, the governor shut down anything in the state that had over 250 people. So I was worried about even getting back into Maine. If you remember correctly, everybody was, the borders were getting locked down between states and all this crazy stuff was happening. And so I was very lucky to get back into Maine, but that was it. I canceled many appearances that we had, slated for that year. And like everybody else, I went into hibernation. So that was the end of the Byron series. And really, the line that was putting these books out through HarperCollins was their Witness Impulse line. and they pretty much just killed that line. They stopped doing anything with it. So a lot of my fellow writers have moved on to other publishers, and myself included now. So it's unfortunate. I was about 2/3 of the way through the fifth Byron, which was tentatively titled Under the Gun, and was really enjoying the write, and felt like it was even the better of the entire series, and then that was the end of it. So that uncompleted manuscript is languishing on my shelf, and we'll see. Hopefully there'll be a way to get back to that someday. We'll see. But I actually am writing another procedural series now, in addition to the one that you and I talked about off camera. I'm currently under two different 4-book contracts with my current publisher, Severn River, and aside from the co-authoring series, I've got another series that I'm writing called the Detective Justice Mysteries, and it features a Maine State Police detective named Brock Justice, and Brock is the first book is done. It's called Crimson Thaw, and that will be out hopefully sometime next year. And really, what it is my main character is a second generation state trooper, and his dad won the legendary Trooper Award. So when I was trying to imagine what kind of horrible things I could do to him, I said, imagine growing up in that household, with a dad who won that, how hard that would be as a kid.
Yes.
So he ended up becoming a detective for the Maine State Police, investigating homicides for the southern part of the major crimes unit for the Maine State Police. And in the opening scene of Crimson Thaw, the first novel, something happens that throws his life into chaos. And as a result of that, he is shipped off to the Maine equivalent of Siberia, and he's now working major crimes north for the Maine State Police. And so it's really a fish out of water type of a series. But it's a lot of fun to dive back into the deep end of the procedural pool, as it were. So and I get to play in my home state. And because he is a Maine State Trooper, I'm not limited to the Portland area. Brock can really go any place. So I've decided to set him in the northeastern reaches of the state of Maine, and give me a chance to explore, a lot of the small town Maine that people know and love. So.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Amazing what we do to our characters, right? We put them in
Right.
unbelievable situations, and then of course we try to write them out of those same situations we put them in.
Right.
So you've got that new series. So you had the other series that you did. It was LynDee Walker that you're a co-author with, and
right.
Tell us a little bit about that series.
So I was approached, I don't know, about 2.5 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago, I guess, and LynDee Walker, who I'd known as another writer that I had run into at various conferences. She was another mystery writer. She actually had 2 series going on her own. She had floated the idea of starting a mystery / action adventure series that she really wanted to write, and time really was the big problem. She was already juggling 2 series, so the publisher's like, when will you ever be able to get to this? And so they came up with the idea of having a co-author brought in to write the books with her, and my name was on a short list, and they came to my agent. My agent came to me, and after about 4 months of finagling me and trying to see if I would do it, I had no problem with writing with LynDee. That wasn't my issue. I think I was really more nervous about doing something that might be off-putting to my readership that I already had. Anytime you make a change like that, you don't know, what the reaction will be. But I'm glad I did it. In short order, it became a lot of fun to write. I've had a ball working with LynDee. I'm currently working on the 4th novel right now, The Pharaoh's Tomb. And we've had a real good response to the first 2 books that have already been released, The General's Gold and The Cardinal's Curse. The next book up will be released on October 29th, and that's the 3rd book in the series, called The Pirate's Secret. And we have just had an absolute blast writing these. it's funny because, you know, coming from writing procedurals, you try to stay right within color within the lines and try to keep things as realistic as possible. And, you know, the way police officers investigate crimes. But when you're writing action adventure, all bets are off. And so these have just been so much fun. There's a historical element to each one of these stories. And we try to keep the historical element at least somewhat based in fact. But because of what we're writing, you know, we take that fact and pull it and twist it and treat it like Play-Doh, and then have a lot of fun with it. So, you know, sometimes I'm writing current day scenes, and other times it's historical scenes, you know, that might be hundreds of years old. So it really allows you as a writer, I think, to dust off your imagination and have fun with it. And you know, as a straight up mystery writer to begin with, that's not something you get to do every day. So we kind of equated this series, if you know, looking for the tagline, as like, you know, Indiana Jones meets National Treasure meets Clive Cussler, and really just wanted to bring our own stamp and put our own stamp on that genre, and add some mystery element to it to really make it fun. And the books have been a blast to write. Hopefully the readers are enjoying. They seem to be enjoying it as much as we are writing them. So it's been a great relationship to have that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was looking at it, Clive Cussler came to mind to me as kind of similar to that. You know, obviously Indiana Jones and
Right.
all those. So what? How is it you two work? You know, co-authoring work together? I don't know where LynDee lives. So is this something you do? Like, did you write one chapter, she writes the next? You know, how does that work in that?
No, I mean every writer we've talked to that does the co-authoring really kind of does their own thing. They do it differently. I think it's one of those things. If you know, for the people watching that are writers or are considering, you know, jumping into that deep end of the pool for co-authoring, you know, you really kind of have to find your own way. Like Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child, I know they swap chapters and that type of thing. And I know Charles Todd and his mom each did different characters and that type of thing. And, you know, that obviously has worked. They've been ridiculously successful, both of those partnerships. But LynDee and I think the reason we decided to do it the way we did was because LynDee really she was the series was her baby. You know, she had the genesis for how this was going to play out, and how a lot of the character building and world building would be. And she had already, you know, really kind of plotted out a lot of the General's Gold, the first book in the series. And so, you know, when I came in and we started talking, you know, it was, I think one of the things that I may have added was the character of Harrison, which is really Avery Turner, who's the main character, her right hand. And when we were trying to decide, you know, what to give her, because she's this brilliant computer genius who's great at, you know, she's, you know, like self-defense stuff, and she's really kind of got all the tools. She's young, she's energetic, she's very bright, and so we wanted to give her some kind of an assistant. And you know, as LynDee pointed out, the last thing I wanted was high heels and a pantsuit, you know, person helping her. She was looking for more of an Alfred, I think, kind of for a right hand. And so as I was sitting there looking at some of the stuff she'd written, I thought, well, I said, why don't we just have a, you know, retired homicide detective from New York City that was her deceased mother's former partner, and you know, and he'll be that guy. You know, he has links to the intelligence community, links to police stuff, and some skills that he brings to the table, and he's just a retired detective. And I thought, well, that's something I thought I might be able to write. And so the curmudgeon, the friendly curmudgeon, as our editor calls him, our Eeyore, was born in the form of Harrison. And so Uncle Harry really has become a mainstay, really kind of the third wheel, I think, in the character arc that we have set up here. So, but yeah, we started writing. So she had done so much of the plotting of that first novel that one of the things we did when we were trying to decide whether or not I wanted to, you know, jump into this thing and if we wanted to give it a shot was I said, give me your first couple of scene outlines and let me write whatever I can come up with from that. You know, let me use my imagination and see if what I write you even like. And so I wrote the first two scenes for the General's Gold. just based on a couple little paragraphs that she had written, and she loved what I did. So after that, I think it was really easy. We both knew we were on the same wavelength, and it would work well together. So really, what happens is she does most of the plotting for these books. We as time has gone on, we've kind of figured out to keep that stuff a little bit looser, because I tend to kind of go off on my own tangent as I'm writing. We equated that to the old the Tim Conway routine on the Mary Tyler Moore
Harvey
show.
Korman,
Right.
Harvey Korman and him on the old
Tim would go
Calvin
off
show.
on a tangent and not follow the script that they had practiced all week. And so there's a little bit of that, a little Tim Conway in me in that. And so it works. I take what she gives me for notes and outlines and research, and I kind of blow it up and make it, come to life on the page, the dialogue and all that stuff. And so when I have finished and gone through the draft a few times, I send it back to her. And really what's great about it is it's the first time she gets to see what I did with her outline. And any changes I make, I get a real reaction from her, because she had no idea those were going to be there. So it's like having the ultimate beta reader. She's the other writer.
Yes.
And then so when she goes through it, we get real time reaction to what she thinks of what I've written. And then I tell people at that point, anything she adds to it, and she adds quite a bit, is the magic, fairy dust that brings the book the final way. And then the editor takes a look at it and makes some suggestions, and then we do the changes, or we don't, whatever happens after that. So it's really been a pretty flawless process, and it seems to work for both of us. It's funny because neither one of us were major plotters before we wrote this series, but she's become a fantastic plotter. And I think we both kind of wrote before this, probably, very similarly, where you have some idea what your book is and where it's going, but you don't sit down and actually plot out an entire novel. You tend to still fly by the seat of your pants a little bit. And but I think this has changed both of us a little bit in that regard. But it's been great. I mean, I tell people it's a blast to do, and I don't know if they believe me or not, or if they're, enthused and want to go out and get their own co-author thing or whatever going. But, everybody's experience is different. I've been very lucky that LynDee and I clicked, and it's just been a blast to do. So.
Well, I think that's essential. I've never tried to co-author with anyone, and I'm a bit of a control freak, so I probably would have a little bit of problem doing it. But it'd be one of those interesting experiments to see how it goes. But you have to have that. I mean, it's not really being married, but you do have to have some of that connection, obviously. And you said be on the same wavelength. Well,
it is a work marriage. I mean, there's no question about it. And the one thing we talk about when people ask us all the time is that it was really more about just learning to trust. We kind of had to trust each other. I had to trust that, she would come up with a story that was, worth telling in a structure that made sense, some sense. And then she had to trust me with that baby to turn it into something good. And, the first book was a huge learning experience for the two of us. She had to tell me repeatedly, because every time I wanted to suggest a change as I was writing, I was afraid to do anything that was kind of off script, because it was the first time, I had no idea how she would be with it. And she kept saying, write your book, write your book. Don't worry about that. Take it where you think it should go in relation to the story you're telling. And I finally got that through my thick skull, and we've every book has actually been a little easier to write, I think, because of that. We both have that trust for each other. So, but that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I'm sure that's no different for Doug Preston or Lincoln Child or the Charles Todd team. I suspect trust always comes into it, and once you've established that trust, I think it becomes much easier for you both to work on the same project.
So this is supposed to be a 4-book series?
It is a 4-book series. Yeah, I'm currently working on number 4. The third one comes out in October, and then the fourth one is slated. The Pharaoh's Tomb is slated to be released on May 20th next year. So, and then I've still got the 4-book series with the Detective Justice Mysteries, and book 1 is is already in the can. I'm going to do another pass on that, and then I have to have that into the editor by mid-November, and then it'll be time to get working on number 2. So no rest for the wicked, right here.
Well, as long as there's a demand, right?
Exactly.
You
It's
hope
a
there's a
great
demand.
problem to have. Great problem to have.
Well, and that gets a bit. You're obviously traditionally published. You're not
Right.
independent, so you've
Right.
got those deadlines. You've
Oh
got the
yeah.
contracts and all those
Yep.
things, and you've
Yep.
got to hit those milestones.
It's funny. I remember, when I was first writing, when I first set out, my mentor, the person that I spent a lot of time talking to back then, was a woman named Kate Flora, and Kate is a very accomplished mystery author, regular author, and she's done true crime books as well. And she was my mentor. I mean, she kind of took me under her wing and kind of let me make the mistakes I had to make, and kept the positive outlook and kept me going. And I spent a lot of time talking with her and letting her read stuff that I'd written on my first attempt at a novel. And then also when I finally got to the point of writing what would become Among the Shadows, she was there for that as well. But the one thing I never forgot was that the caveat she used to throw at me, which was, be careful what you wish for. And like any other unpublished author, in that corner, you're trying to absorb everything you can, but you're not listening really to anybody. All you can see is that, that finish line is the one that says published author on it. You want to break that tape and be the first one across the line. And anything else is just secondary, it's all noise. But she would tell me repeatedly, be careful what you wish for. And then, one day, once we finally did this, and I signed that first contract with Harper, and I saw the word count they expected for each book, and I saw the deadlines, the dates actually laid out in front of me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what was I thinking? It was as scary signing that first contract as signing my first mortgage. You look at the payoff date and how many how much you're actually paying for a house that's worth whatever, and that was terrifying. I remember thinking, I was thrilled, I was scared, the whole thing, and suddenly, seeing those deadlines looming in front of you, I suddenly knew what she meant about being careful what you wish for. So that's one of those things that every writer out there that's hoping to break through that that barrier, just keep that in mind, because you have your entire life to write that first novel. But once you get there and you sign something on the dotted line, you're going to have less than a year to write every book. So it definitely changes the game. It's more structured. It forces you to treat it as a job. It's no longer a hobby when someone's paying you to do it, and there are people waiting to read it. There's an element of stress that goes along with that. It's a good stress. I mean, no question about it. No complaints there, but it definitely changes the game. I think anytime, if you're an artist, it doesn't matter if it's music or painting or writing, whatever it is that your format is in. Once it becomes a paying gig, it's a job, and so you kind of have to go about it in a different way. But if your love of writing is the thing that has to come first, and as long as you can remember that and keep it front and center, then writing never really becomes tedious. I look forward to writing every day. So even with the deadlines attached, I love writing. So.
Do you feel like it's therapeutic sometimes too to write?
It is. It's funny. The one thing that I've learned to do by writing these books with LynDee is that I do that deep dive. When you're writing your own book, they're your ideas, and so they can only come to you the way they come to you. But if you're writing and you're using somebody else's notes to sort of point you in the right direction, but you still have to make it up. For me, I literally take the dive down that hole every day, that rabbit hole, and whatever it is. If the last 2 days I've written, I think 4,500 words, but I aspire to get at least 1,200 or so a day, and I dive into that like Alice in Wonderland. I'm wherever the characters we're writing about are. I'm experiencing whatever they're experiencing, and I'm writing it as it comes to me. I'm not stopping to think about it. I just write it. And it's really weird. It's like tapping into that idea well every single day. And thus far, it's become easier for me to write. I actually look forward to that. Whatever time that it takes me to do, it may take me an hour and a half, it may take me 3 or 4 hours, whatever it is for my word count. And when that's over, it's almost like coming out of a trance. You have to come back to the real world, and there are things that people expect from you and chores that have to be done and everything else. But during the time that I'm in that other world writing, it's just fun. It's like being a kid and using your imagination again. The way we used to spend our days before cable TV and the internet and cell phones. Really, it kind of takes me back to that, and so it's as fun for me to write the books as it is for me to be a reader, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking myself out of the real world and entertaining myself as I write them, and I think that's what writing really should be for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, when we were kids, we had little, at least how old I am, to get the little plastic stick figures or whatever, and we play
Right.
Cowboys and Indians or GI
Right.
Joe or whatever. And
Yep.
yes, this is kind of an extension of that writing.
Yep. It's an escape. I mean, it's really all it is. I think you have to learn to exercise that muscle again, that imagination muscle that nobody had to teach you when you were a kid. We all knew how to do that. We knew how to make stuff up. When I read books as a kid, it did the same thing. It transported me to someplace else. It transported me to wherever I was reading about, and I was there with the characters. And now, as I say an adult, but I'm still a work in progress. But as an adult, technically, at least according to the calendar, it's
You
the
got
same
the gray
thing.
hair for an adult.
Right.
So.
I know what little I have left. But, it's our chance to play Peter Pan. You really, you don't have to grow up. You can sit there and use your imagination and create anything, really. The sky's the limit. And you hope that the readership will be there for whatever it is you're writing. And I've been very lucky that has happened. So far, I haven't written anything to put anybody to sleep. So that's a good thing.
No reviews that said this was a snoozer, huh?
Oh, there's always negative reviews, but that's all right.
Yes.
You can kill those people off in your next book.
That's right. They become a character, right?
Right.
Yeah. Don't put your real name when you put it down on a review, because if you give a bad one, you're going to be dead here soon. Right? Yeah. So you talked about Stephen King. What other influences for you that you like to read? Obviously, Stephen is
so
more of the horror genre, and he does some dysphonia stuff. And,
right. There's a million. I like to read anything, really. I mean, it's I think to a certain extent you end up pigeonholed in whatever genre you write, because
Sure.
Your friends are writing in that genre. People are looking for blurbs and that kind of thing, and so I think as a result of that, or you might be judging something. You're reading books that in the area you already know. But I go off script as well. I really read almost anything. I like the biography stuff. I like true crime stuff. Occasionally I'll read. Just great storytelling. There's so many in Maine, and so I always hate listing, because if I start listing out writers, they're going to be like, "Geez, you didn't mention my books," or whatever it is. But there are literally hundreds of writers. One of the ones that I have to give a shout out to, though, because for me, once I started to write mystery, I think one of the things that became an influence for me was reading James Lee Burke, especially the Dave Robichaux series. I've always had a little bit of an appreciation for people that can play with words and are poetic, or can write poetry that actually speaks to you on some other level. And for what James actually does, I mean, he's writing really gritty, dark, noir crime fiction that's set in New Orleans, in the area of New Orleans, but he does it in such a way that you got people doing the most horrific things to each other, and a lot of bad guys are everywhere. It's sometimes hard to tell which ones are the good guys and which ones are the bad guys, but he does it. And in between all of those scenes, you'll read passages that are really nothing more than love letters to Louisiana. And he captures the area and the smells and the sights and sounds, and they're just brilliantly written. The fact that he can combine those and merge them into books that are as popular as they are is something to aspire to, I think. I read his books, and it's an entirely different experience. So But, and people say, well, geez, the last few years, what are the best books you've read and whatever. And, I always throw out, the ones that grab me that I didn't see coming, William Crent Kruger's Ordinary Grace. That floored me. I just thought, wow, that's so different than what he normally writes. And again, that kind of spoke to me. Karen Dion's Marsh King's Daughter, brilliant, just great writing, great storytelling. And to me, they just seem to come out of left field because, like Kent writes a procedural series, and so you come to expect that he's writing procedure series. Probably like if you picked up a Byron book, you'd say, you're expecting my next one to be similar to the other books in the series. And when he wrote Ordinary Grace, it was not part of the series, just a standalone book, but it totally blew me away. I'm like, wow, this is next level stuff. So for me, I'm always looking for that. I love the stuff that I love to go back to. You curl up with your pint of beer or whatever it is, and you hunker down into your favorite books. But every once in a while, you pick one up that just is something totally different than what you would have expected, and it says, "Wow, I need to try harder. This is really good." And to me, those are two of the most recent books I think that did that to me. So for anyone out there who hasn't read those, grab those up. They're very, very good. So
yeah, I'll have to check those out. So yeah, and I see some books behind you there, so I'm sure you've got lots and lots of books.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Much to my wife's chagrin, yes, there are steps. My steps are lined with them. My bookcases, everything. She forbid me from building any more bookcases. I was doing woodworking before I had all these books to write, and so I built my own bookcases, and she said no more bookcases. So I was feeding my own, because the joke's on her, because I don't have to put them in a bookcase. I can put them anywhere. So
yeah,
but yeah, I was kind of feeding my own Jones there by creating places to put more books. So
well, you can open up a library, right? So.
Right, we donate a lot to libraries actually, so that still works out.
So being a police officer past,
mm-hmm.
how realistic, obviously, I'm sure everybody asked you that. What is it you see cops portrayed on TV and in books, and it's a lot different, I'm sure, than it was in real life. And obviously Portland was not a big town, so it's not like you were in New York or LA or Chicago, where crime is everywhere. But
I think excitement in the story has to enter into it. I get that. I mean, people ask that about my own series, and I try to stay as true to life as I can. But at the end of the day, you're only going to get 400 pages or so to be able to solve the mystery. And so in real life, cases drag on for years sometimes. Right. But I think one of the things that to me really tells me that the writer knows what they're doing, and I mentioned this earlier about Michael Conley, is when they get into the heads of the investigators. If I think, we all have seen enough, or even if it's not very good television, we've all been exposed to enough things like Law and Order and all those shows where you have some idea what the police officers actually do, or detectives do. But we don't actually always get to see how that affects the people who do the job for real in real life. And that was one of the things that I endeavored to bring to the Byron series, is that, and I remember somebody said, Joe Wambaugh made this comment at one point, that, if you're going to write police officers, don't write what they do necessarily, write what the job does to them. And I think for anyone who wants to write that, that's the important stuff. Everybody that isn't in that job wants to know what it's like. They want to know what the experiences would be like. If they're writers, they definitely want to know what that's like. And all they can really do, if they haven't done it themselves, is sort of try to project things that have happened in their own lives and make that parallel to be able to describe scenes or the effects they would have on them. But it's, to me, that's the thing you either do that very well or you don't. I can tell right off when I'm reading a book if somebody actually knows the stuff. Kate Flora has always done that well. Michael Conley has always done that well. Reed Farrell Coleman does that very well. In his new series, the new Nick Ryan series is great. And Nick Ryan isn't your average detective. He's sort of he's a dark hero, if you will. He's sort of the anti protagonist, if there's such a thing. But you can still see, even in that character, the toll of the job and what it does and how it changes people, power structures, and all that type of stuff. So I am always a fan of that. I know Jesse Stone series was one of my favorites that Robert B. Parker wrote.
Mhm.
And because, you're seeing the small town cop, but he's the small town cop that became the small town cop when the big city cop that he was got canceled, basically because he was doing things he wasn't supposed to do. And so really it's that same kind of story, the damaged warrior, I think is really what you're looking at. And anyone that can do that well, for me, it's real apparent quickly when you're reading the book that they know what they're talking about. So they either have done the job themselves or they've got really good people to go to find out what they need to know. So.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my next question because it's what's most important to bring life to characters. Well, you kind of talked about that. What for you, what really brings those characters out? And obviously, it's that internal part of those characters, and it's beyond the job. It's
Right.
what the job does
Yeah.
to them, as Mr. Wamba had said.
No, he definitely, and he does it probably better than anybody. Joe Wamba does.
Mhm.
It's funny because one of the things that comes up, and I don't know that we've ever done this or not, but like a lot of the spouses will go to the conferences and that type of thing. And for those that write police procedure, having lived police procedure, I always thought it would be fascinating to hear what the spouses had to say. First of all, about living with a crazy writer. But also about what it was like to survive being the spouse of somebody who did that for a career. I've said some nice things about my wife already, honey, if you were listening. And but the truth is that I couldn't have done that job without her either. That's a job that takes a toll, and I'm definitely not the same person that I was when I started working in police work. And I'm blessed that she stayed with me for that time, because I don't know that I could have done it had the shoe been on the other foot. There's a price to be paid for living that weird life, and being exposed to things that do have a negative impact on you, and not being able to share those or to offload those in the family circle. Some people have jobs where you can, how was your day, honey, is a pretty standard thing when you get home, and maybe it's an entertaining, fun job that you get to talk about that way. But police work was never that.
Right.
There's a lot of dark that happens, a lot of bad stuff that happens, and things you internalize because you don't want that coming into your home. And it makes for great writing and it makes for deep characters, but it also comes at a price. I mean, there's no question about that. I'm blessed that I had the experiences that I had so that I can write the things that I write. And, sometimes they also come from coworkers or friends of mine that have experienced stuff. But at the same time, I know that there's a price for that. It's not just making stuff up. When I'm writing the Turner and Mosley Files, I don't have those reoccurring bad dreams. But when I'm writing police procedurals, sometimes that stuff comes right back. So, and I think probably anybody who writes about their own experiences has that same feeling. So,
Yeah, I did a Citizens Police Academy here in Westminster, Colorado, and I encourage people, if it's offered in your area, to go in there and you get a sense of what police officers go through, and you can do ride-alongs. I did a ride-along with a police officer, and he got to talk to me, and you could hear his frustration in his voice.
Yep.
This was a year and a half ago, so a lot of stuff was going on, and
Yep.
a lot of news and stuff. So it was very enlightening to see the other side. You hear about all the negative, but then you hear
Right.
about these are real people.
Right.
Like with everything else, there's good and bad in everything in this world, but they're out there doing a really hard job and trying to protect people. And there's that fine line, and they're dealing with that threat element all the time. There's always
Right.
that possibility someone could pull a gun and try to shoot them, and
Yep.
that's tough to live with.
Yep. No, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of dangerous jobs. That just happens to be one of them. But yeah, no, it's I think society in general has always had a love-hate relationship with their law enforcement. It's the nature of the beast. So it's funny,
like the government, right? Like the
very
government,
much.
we don't like the government getting in our lives, but when we need them, we want them, and it's the
Right.
same
Yeah,
with
very
police. You
much.
know,
Yeah.
we want them there, but we don't want
Right.
them bothering us until we need them.
Right. Well, and everybody, and as they should be, are big proponents of police following the rules and not stepping outside of the law.
Right.
But all you have to do is suddenly have one of your family members be taken, or something along those lines, and the stuff that I've heard people say you wouldn't believe. Suddenly they don't care about the laws or the rules, and I think that speaks of the import of having law enforcement in the first place. I mean, society sometimes is its own worst enemy. None of us want to be told what to do, but we all expect people to follow the rules until it affects us directly. So it's one of those weird things. That's something you can have a conversation about forever. But what I love about that is that it kind of speaks to how complex human nature is, and it gives you a place to start every story. If you're going to write about that stuff, there's a lot of different perspectives that need to be addressed in the story to tell it honestly and to tell it fairly. And I just think that's what crime writers should do. If they're trying to tell something honestly, then they need to look at every perspective and every side.
Well, yeah, and that's the way it is, and none of us are 100% good, and I think even bad guys are not usually 100% bad. They still have redeeming qualities sometimes as well.
Right.
So we all kind of go run on that fence, so to speak. We kind of are on one side or the other. Bosch was a good type of character where he sometimes does cross the line and do things, and then he gets mad when someone else crosses a line, and he doesn't like it. So,
the conundrum of being human, right? Yeah, that's how that works. Yeah. But it makes for interesting
for me to do it, but not you can't do that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we've talked a little bit. Obviously, a police officer. Are any of your stories based on real events, or any of the characters real people? Obviously, change the names. And being from Portland, your stuff takes place in a place you work. Right. So.
No, I mean, I used a lot of, some of my coworkers had some interesting quirks, and I picked and choose those wherever I wanted to, if I wanted to add some color to a character. But yeah, I mean, there are people that I like, Marty Leroyer that John Byron worked for. He's a lieutenant in charge of CID, and he's really an amalgamation of three different people that I worked for. And so he's got some of their quirks, some of each of their quirks, but he's his own guy. I mean, he's not any one of them. I really kind of did that with all the characters. Some I may have based on, physical appearance of somebody or this or that, but they're all their own. Some of them are totally invented, and some are based on certain things. None of the stories have been based on anything that I actually worked. That was just sort of a deal I made with myself that I wasn't going to write true crime.
Right.
So they're all fictional tellings, but at the same time, I populate the books with things that are experiences that I know well, to make the scenes and the frustrations of the detectives, I think, more realistic by putting in things that may have happened to me or my coworkers to be part of the story. And I think that adds a lot of realism. I know I've heard from enough people that have actually done this job, that have read the books, that they know that what I'm writing is legit, and a lot of them have experienced similar things. So it's funny to see, even around the globe, how similar law enforcement is, no matter what country you're in. I think people are still people, no matter where you go. We may speak different languages and have different cultures, but at the end of the day, it's human nature that kind of guides us along.
So what advice do you give to aspiring authors, other than what you said earlier about you cross that bridge and then you realize, oh my gosh, this is a job now.
Right.
At least if you're going to be a traditionally published author. Indie author, I kind of write my own rules, and I put my own internal timelines on myself,
which is a lot of work. I already know that for sure. But no, I mean, you do, if you really have to do it for the right reasons. I mean, there can't be anything else driving you other than you love the written word. You love to write, you love to read. And if you don't love to read, then don't even think about getting into this business. That really would be something that would handicap you right off the bat. I don't care how many stories you have or how talented you think you are. You can learn so much by reading other authors. And if you're not entertained by reading other authors' work, then I don't think you can really do yourself justice as a writer. You have to kind of be in touch with what other people are reading, and you have to know what it means to be entertained by other writers. So that would be first and foremost. Read all you can possibly get your hands on, and be curious, and see what they do. I mean, it's no different than anything else. When you're learning something, you're watching somebody, and you see what they do. What you like, what you don't like. You kind of have to see what other authors do, how they structure, why this writing works, why this writing doesn't. How they tell a story, how they create characters, what it is about their characters that you like. There's two types of reading. There's reading for the fun of it and the entertainment value. And then if you're a writer, go back and read the book again and look at it from a writer's perspective. What is it you're seeing them do that works for you, and what doesn't work? And I think there's always something you can learn from other writers. But it's really about stick-to-itiveness. All of these sound so cliche, and I remember hearing people say, "Oh, we were all on the unpublished writers' corner at one point." And I used to think, what a crock. Some of these people in New York Times bestsellers, right? But you forget that they really were unpublished writers, and the difference between them and somebody who never makes it is that the person who never makes it quit. If you have any talent at it at all, and you have a passion for doing it, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So really, it just comes down to, you want your shot, and the only way you get your shot is to keep doing it. A lot of people talk about hiking the Appalachian Trail too, but very few actually complete the whole thing. I think publishing is very much like that. You either love to write, and you're going to do it no matter what. I mean, for example, I tell people, if Stephen King suddenly could not get a contract tomorrow, for whatever reason, nobody wanted to read his books anymore, and that was the end of it. He doesn't need the money. I'm sure he's got things he could do with his time to entertain himself. But I'm pretty sure I can sleep at night telling you that he would still write. There's no way in hell that he would stop writing just because the audience went away. There's no way. He's a writer. That's what he does. It's what we all do. We get up and we can't wait to write the next scene. So if you have that in your blood, and you have it it's your passion, you'll make it. Just don't give up. Don't quit. And take the criticism and learn from it. Learn to figure out what criticism you're getting that actually is good criticism, and what criticism is just somebody being negative, and learn and move forward. Again, now think about how many times some of the writers that we read have been rejected. And had they given up and walked away from that, we wouldn't have been entertained with, thousands of books that we've read. So if you want it bad enough, it's yours. You just got to go out and grab it. I mean, I honestly think that's the truth. We're all going to have different degrees of success. I guess if you measure by ratings and money and all that other stuff, I guess there's definitely a difference between all of us. But if you only judge it by, you've written something that you really like, and other people feel the same way that have read it, not your mom or your dad or your sister, but people that you don't even know have loved what you've written, then you've already had success. Everything else after that's gravy. That's all it is you're writing books for people you're never going to meet. And if you've done a good job with it, they're going to love it. They can't wait for the next one. And maybe you've given them, 10 or 12 hours escape from whatever it is in their life that's making things tough for them. To me, that's what being a writer is.
Yeah, it's always nice when I had a lady who came up. I do a lot of craft fairs in town to sell books, because I actually do pretty well at craft fairs as opposed to other things. But she came up to me after my Divine Devil series, and I'd written the final book, and she pointed at me and says, "I'm mad at you." I says, "Why?" I says, "You're ending this series. I don't want it to end." I really felt really good about hearing that. I mean, it was time to end the series. I wrote it. I said, "Well, you never know. I might write another one later, but right now I wanted to do other things." But that always feels good when you get that. That makes it worthwhile. All those hours, as we talked about, our hourly rates,
right?
what it is, every hour we get for all the money that we make from it. And some authors, and it's a very small less than 1% are really making gobs of money, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's all the rest are happy that maybe, at least for my case, breaking even, being independent, because I got to pay for everything myself. But
Right, right. And you've written characters that you made up that have become just as real to the reader as they are to you when you're writing them. To me, that's just something that you can't measure that. I mean, that's just so cool. You know, you'll get emails out of the blue, or someone will send you a private message or whatever it is, and you know that you've written something that touched them on a personal level. There's nothing better than that. You know, there's no royalty check that's going to beat that. You know, that puts a smile on your face, and it means what you're doing is worthwhile. And again, worthwhile for people you may never meet. You've made a connection with them, and that's really cool.
so I don't know if you have any marketing tips. Being with the big publishers, they do most of the marketing for you. And I know you were talking about COVID, where your one book kind of didn't do as well because you couldn't really get out there and
Right.
promote it as much. So,
You know,
what
they
are the
don't.
best ways?
Yeah, I mean, you just have to get out in front of the public. I mean, that's one of the things. I kept doing that. You know, really, at my wife's urging, even I kept doing that even when I was out of contract. When in between having contracts to write books, I still attended the conferences. I still went to libraries and things like that, and talked to people. And I think you have to remain relevant. You know, in this business, you're either writing a book or you're talking to people about writing, or you quickly disappear. And I think that's just something you have to do. You know, you talk about what the big publishers do. You may have an unrealistic expectation of how much they actually do. You know, I think every writer is familiar with, you know, what you might get out of a big publisher on the first book. But you find that is quickly devolves into where did they go? You really, you know, you do it on your own. You know, I love public speaking. You know, I'm probably not any less nervous about it than anyone else is. I just happen to enjoy doing it. But that's part of the deal. I mean, I know some people don't like to do that. They like to, you know, sit in the closet and write their books. And, you know, we all have our moments about that we enjoy, and that's part of the business. But I still think you have to get out and make connections with the reader. I think that's imperative. You know, there's a reason that I went out and stood in line with hundreds of other people to get an autograph of a writer that I really looked up to. And it wasn't because I didn't have better things to do with my time. It was because I wanted to meet the person that had written what they'd written that touched me on a personal level. I wanted to know who they were. I wanted to get to see them and have my picture taken with them, or just even chat with them for a minute. That means something to the reader. And I think as a writer, you're doing a disservice to yourself and to your own career if you're not allowing the readers a chance to get to know you. You know, I just think that's part of the deal. That's part of the package. It means so much to the readers. It did to me as a kid, and it does to me as an adult. You know, I still get excited when I get a chance to run across a writer that I've been reading for years that I've never met at a conference. You know, there's a little fanboy and a little fangirl in all of us, and you know, and you think to yourself, okay, well, you know, yeah, I'm not Michael Conley, and I'm not James Lee Burke, and I'm not Karen Dion, but at the same time, you are to somebody, you know, and so you can't rob that from the readership. You have to get out, I think, and talk to people. I just think that's part of the deal. You know, they want to know how you wrote your book. They want to know where you got the ideas. They want to know what's next. And as a writer, I think you owe that to the readers. You know, they give a lot of their time up to read what we've written. It's nice to give something back and go out and talk to them, sign their books.
So I know you got to get up and speak at least once at the last Kill in Nashville. It may have been more than once. I don't remember. I know you were at the award ceremony. You got up, talked. I can't remember if you did another. And then you're usually on panels, and several of the panels. I think you're a few panels again this year. But events you're going to be doing. I know you've got Kill in Nashville, BoucherCon coming up.
Yep. Doing those two. My wife and I actually are driving down to Nashville next Tuesday. We'll attend both of those conferences back to back, and then and I'll be writing on the road because those deadlines don't stop just because Bruce is at a conference. But I'll, you know, really for me, like I say, it's a chance to see the fans. It's a chance to catch up with writers, kind of refill that well that I think keeps us all going. and hear of the successes and the trials and tribulations of our fellow writers. And then I come back and I'm still writing. I think the next conference for me after those two will be in November, the New England Crime Bake in Dedham, Massachusetts in November. And then that's it, I think, for the year. I have a few other library appearances, but for the most part, I'll be hunkering down. We'll be launching the third Turner and Mosley Files book, The Pirate's Secret, on October 29th. I'll be doing that right in Portland. And then preparing for what comes next year, trying to get the finishing touches on the first detective justice mystery, Crimson Thaw, and then and starting on the next book. So yeah, no, pedal to the metal, doing the appearances, but you still got to keep putting out the work. So yep, cranking right along. That's my plan for this fall.
So you're writing in the car while you're driving. So where do you put that iPad? Is it sitting on your lap, or you got a mount there on the dash, or what? Not while you're driving, of course.
My wife does all the driving. She
Yeah.
doesn't trust my concentration level because I'm usually half the time in a story in my head. But yeah, no, a lot of notes and that type of thing, or correspondence and stuff. I'll take care of when we're on the road. But once we get to where we're going, even if it's just for the night at the hotel, I have to write something. I'll always crank something out to make sure that the word count keeps going. So, and it's like anything else, if you're staying in the story every day, it's not hard to get back into the thread. If you take days off, it becomes difficult. I think I tell people it's like the gym. When you're going every day, it's a habit. It's part of your day. You take a few days off, and suddenly, you find excuses on why you don't want to go to the gym. So I think writing can be the same way. It's good for you, but you have to keep doing it. So.
Yes, and I'll be at Killer Nashville and BoucherCon as well. I've never been to a BoucherCon before, so I hear it's a much bigger event than even Killer Nashville is.
It is. It's memorable. You may be floored at how big it is, but it's a lot of fun, right? There's a lot of energy, a lot of fun, and again, you're meeting all kinds of authors that you might not meet otherwise. So that's just very cool.
Well, I'm sure I'll be fanboying probably if I see any of
you and me both.
Right. I was a huge Robert B. Parker fan. I would have loved to meet him. He was a very quiet guy and didn't, I think, do a lot of public. But I would have always loved to have met him. And Lee Child now is kind of stepping away from, and his brother's taking over.
Yep.
The books.
Both of those guys are very nice too.
Yeah, and I saw you had a picture of with you and Lee Child, so that was good. Great. So, and I think Robert Mosley, I think it was, I think I saw a picture of, I think it was Robert Mosley. Anyway, so all right. So how can people find you? I know you've got your website.
Yep. And I'm all over social media. BruceRobertCoffin.com. You can find me at. I'm on Facebook, Bruce Robert Coffin. I have an author page there, Instagram, X, Threads, you name it, I'm everywhere. You should be able to find me pretty easy. So if you can't find me there, there's a Severn River publishing page and a HarperCollins page. I'm all over the place. So
yeah, HarperCollins, and then there's the Severn River books. Yep.
And if you're down in Nashville, you'll find me there for at least a week and a half.
Yes, dealing with the heat and humidity. Hopefully the rain isn't too bad. I know 2-3 years ago they had a really bad flooding there the one year we were there. How many years have you been going to Killer Nashville?
This will be my 5th or 6th, maybe. Something like
this
that.
Is my 4th. So
No, I really enjoy those conferences. It's nice to, like I say, it's nice to catch up with people. There's a lot of friends I have that go to that conference, and I may chat with them or by the phone or by email, but getting to see them in person is worth the price of admission for sure. So. Yeah,
and I've had a few authors on my show. I had Carmen Amato on. I had Mike Farsi on. So, and Carmen had a picture of you three together. So,
good people.
Yeah, she was talking about you guys are both so tall, and I was like, I had to bring the camera back, or we only saw her head.
Awesome.
All right. Well, great. Well, Bruce, I appreciate having you on. It was great talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the program.
I'll get to see you in Killer Nashville, maybe BoucherCon.
Definitely.
One of the two. I'll try not to stalk you too much, but and I'm short too, so I'll be looking up as well. So.
I look forward to it, Randy.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. You too.
Have a safe trip from Maine.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. Thanks, everybody. That is it for the show. I'm not going to do another show for a few weeks because I will be in Nashville for the Killer Nashville and BouchCon. We're going to drive the motorhome out. So I'm not going to do an event or do any more shows until we get back. And then we have one other event after that. So we're actually going to be gone for almost 3 weeks. So probably won't be till the middle of September. I'm not sure who my next guest will be, but I'm going to be scouting out some authors at both events, and hopefully I can get some great guests on here that you would enjoy. But I'll say goodbye. Have a great rest of your day. Be sure to check out the rest of the shows I've had on for Bringing Life to Characters. They're all on my YouTube page. You can also find them on my Facebook page and a couple other places as well. So take care, everyone. We'll see you in a few weeks.